Hello again. So we're going to do our second workout of week 3. We're going to start standing upright and we'll be looking at our V stance. So for our V stance, we're going to bring our heels together. Now I want you to think about zippering up from your heel bone up through the center of your thighs to your groin. You want to now stack your vertebrae tall on your pelvis, floating the sternum and relaxing the shoulders. Now keeping the heels pressed together, we're going to turn out through the toes. And we want to think about now wrapping the inside seam of our leggings around our thigh to the outside of our thigh bone. This internal wrapping is the external rotation that you're getting from your hips. And you should feel, if I turn to the side to show you, that you've got a little bit of a connection underneath the glutes at the very root of the hamstring, which will be your bicep femoris. Keeping the heels pressed together, pressed off the soles and upright, keeping the sternum very floated and tall. From here, we feel like we switched on the thighs, so now let's switch on the T-zone. Think about your exhale and your deep flattening of those abdominals at the front of the pelvis, from hip bone to hip bone. Stay tall, keep that turn out from the thigh joint. Now we know that we've got the legs switched on, so let's switch on the upper back. We're going to bring the hands into stop sign position at about face height, with the elbows soft and the shoulders relaxed from the ears. Keeping the T-zone working, exhale to glide the shoulder blades down your back, drawing into the waistline beneath the rib cage. Elbows will come into the waist, and inhale, hands come back to face height. So, from the front, keeping our turn out and our inner thigh switched on, we exhale to glide the shoulder blades down the back. Good, elbows drawing down to the waistline. Inhale, hands come back to face height. Keeping the shoulders level, so we're not hip hinging, we're not lifting through either shoulder blade or belt line. Exhale to glide the shoulder blades down your back. Inhale, hands to face height. Feeling the mid-deep center back connection, as well as now the inner thigh connection and your bicep femoris at the root of that hamstring. Good, keep it going, keeping the abdominals flattening, not pushing the tummy forwards, not losing that nice tall vertebrae. Good, let's make this our final 2. And 1, keep the turn out, keep that external rotation from the thigh itself, and let's go for small squats. So we're going to take a nice deep breath in, we're going to bend softly at the knees want to turn outwards, as we softly switch off that feeling of pressing the inner thigh together. Press against the ground, exhale through T-zone, lift yourself upright, drawing the thighs back together and externally wrapping those thighs once more. Good. Inhale, we bend the knees, turning the knees outwards to follow the line of the toe. Exhale, push against the ground, flattening those abdominals to come on up. Good. Inhale to bend. And exhale to push against the ground. Now, if this is quite hard and you can't keep yourself upright, you feel like you're leaning your chest forwards, you can part your heels. Keep the feeling of turning the thigh out from the hip, and you can have a little part and press against the ground, flattening those abdominals to come upright. Good. If you're not doing this, you could focus on your arm prep, holding a nice strong V stance. Let's do 4. Wanting to keep the chest upright, don't lean forwards through the hips. Try to keep the knees turning outwards, aligned with the toes. Good. We inhale to go down and exhale to push against the ground, flattening to come on up. Last one. Good. Lovely. Let's turn the heels now out. Oh, and come into our normal stance. We feel like we switched off through the legs. Let's switch back on with normal squats. I'll turn to the side. Keep the sternum floating, keep the spine nice and tall, the feet are hip width. Now knees and toes are facing forwards, they travel in the same direction. Take your nice soft breath in. You're going to lean backwards with your bum first, bending softly through the knees to come down into a squat. Notice that my tailbone hasn't lifted, I haven't arched my back. There's a small tilt forwards through the pelvis. Exhale to push against the ground and come on up. Good, we inhale, pushing back with the buttocks, bending through the knees to come into your squat. Exhale, push against the ground to come on up, use those abdominals. Now, if you're not squatting, you could go into a little bit of your hugger tree stretch, just warming up the upper back. We're warming through the lumbar spine and the pelvis connection as well as the legs. And we want to make sure that the T-zone is really responsible in pushing against the ground too, to bring us upright. I mean, T-zone and legs. Jeez Louise. Good, last one. Inhale down and exhale, push against the ground to come on up. Now keep that sensation of tall, pressing against the ground to keep the legs switched on. Lovely. From this position, calf raises, shoulders glided down, float the sternum, take your breath on in. The T-zone's on, we peel the heels on off, float on up into the ball of the foot, arching through the soles. Inhale, bring the heels down slowly to the mat. Try not to hyperextend the knees or push the bum behind you. On the exhale, if you need some stability, hold on to the wall. Peel the heels on off, arch through the soles of the feet and lift onto the ball of the foot. Lovely. Slowly come down on the inward breath and reset your heels to the mat. On the exhale, using the abdominals to peel your weight off your heels and roll through the arches of the feet. And inhale to come down slowly. Good. Add your arm prep if you'd like a little bit more balance work. Of course, if you lose your balance by floating the arms on up to chest height or directly over the shoulder, bring the arms back down and just work through the calf raise. Exhale, making sure you're really lifting through the arches of the feet, and inhale down. Good, let's do 3. Again, if your balance is not that great, place the hand against the wall. You can still work mindfully through the arches of the feet this way. And your balance is not at the forefront of you worrying about falling forwards. Good, let's make this our last one. Peel the heels on off and slowly bring the heels back down. Lovely, let's do a little bit of short spine to bring it all together. Hands are resting on the thighs. We keep the knees facing forwards at hip width. Take your soft breath in with your sternum floated. Push the bum back behind you. You want to come into your squat first, so we're going to bend down through the knees, run the hands down the thighs. Good. Now you're going to tuck your chin all the way under, taking a nice deep breath in, looking at the heels. Exhale, we're going to scoop through the abdominals, round the upper back by pushing hands into thighs and feet into the mat. Roll yourself on up right through that arched spine and come to the top for your breath in. Push the bum back, bending through the knees gently. We're coming into a squat position with hands on thighs. Again, we're not arching through the lower back. We want to keep the tailbone softly drawn down. Take your breath in, turn your chin all the way under to look at your heels. Exhale, push hands into thighs, scoop through the abdominals to arch the upper back towards the ceiling and roll on up. The more pressure you place through the hands into the thighs and into the feet into the mat, you get a deeper scoop and a deeper rounding. So we're inhaling at the bottom to drop the chin under and looking at our heels. Exhale to scoop, roll and round yourself on upright. Good, let's go for 4. Inhaling at the top, exhaling as we melt on down. Holding in the squat position, checking the tailbone softly lowered. Take your breath in, tuck your chin all the way under. Now on the exhale, as you scoop, rounding through the upper back, you're pushing your hands into your thighs to roll on up. Lovely, final 2. Inhale at the top, exhale. Inhaling at the bottom, tucking the chin all the way under. Exhale, scoop, roll and round. Good, last one, a nice deep breath in. Drop the bum back and down, exhale, run the hands down the thighs. Inhale, tuck chin under. Exhale, scoop, roll and round. Slowly bring yourself on upright, relax and switch it off. So you should feel like you've really worked from the hip joint all the way down to the foot. You've also started to work the upper back. We've moved into a more dynamic movement looking at the squat. So now let's concentrate on the upper back. Bring yourself down onto the mat and onto the stomach. Roll on down if you choose, keeping soft or bent knees if your hamstrings are feeling a little bit tight. Now as you come down to the mat, if you need to pop that towel pillow underneath your head to realign or soften the neck pressure, you can do so here. We're starting with overhead activation of the trapezius. So long arms, baby finger on the mat, thumb upwards. Turn your heels on out, we'll come back to the glutes momentarily. Rest the forehead or look into the mat. Your shoulders begin nowhere near your earlobes. Take your soft breath in and now begin your pelvic floor lift, the squeeze of front and back passage. Adding on the exhale, you're scooping your abdominals off the mat, drawing them inside the front of your pelvis
and your two hip bones are narrowing as you flatten those abdominals between them. Take a breath in, and on your next exhale, keep the arms long. Draw the shoulder blades down your back, drawing into the waistline beneath the rib cage. You're drawing that long arm and baby finger down the mat. Inhale, we release. Arms grow long from armpit to fingertip. We're not shrugging upwards, shoulders into earlobes. On the exhale, keeping the arms fairly straight and long, draw the shoulder blades down your back, drawing into that waistline beneath the rib cage. Drag that long arm baby finger down the mat, and then inhale, let the arm grow long from the armpit joint to the fingertip. Exhale, glide the shoulder blades down, and inhale, release. Good, keep the abdominals lifted from the mat. Keep looking down with eyes and nose, or resting your forehead on your pillow or your mat. Keep the neck tension minimal, so that we're really focused on switching on the upper fiber of the trapezius in this exercise. Good. Let's make this our final one. Draw the shoulder blades down your back. Rest your palms flat, keep your T-zone on. Bending at your elbows, exhale, glide your hands down to face height. In their stop sign position with elbows bent, rested on the mat. Now, if you'd like, switch off and take a little break. If you're ready to work with the T-zone switch back on, take a nice soft breath in to prepare. Stop signs. On the exhale, we're going to glide the shoulder blades down the back. They're drawing into the waistline beneath the rib cage. Now you want to feel the deep mid-center back on. It's working at a lot greater intensity than in the standing version of this exercise. Inhale, the hands come back to face height. Keep the abdominals lifted from the mat. Exhale to glide the shoulder blades down your back. Your elbows gliding into the waistline beneath the rib cage. Inhale, hands come back to face height. We're looking to connect to that deep mid-center back and the middle fiber of the trapezius. We want to make sure that we're feeling the shoulder blades glide down beneath that waistline, so that's beneath your bra strap. And you might even start to feel the shoulder blades gliding down into a V shape into the back pocket of your jeans. Keep the abdominals lifted, trying not to switch them off. That would drag the lumbar spine forwards and tilt your pelvis into the mat. Good, keep looking down with eyes and nose. If your forehead tends to float from the mat and your neck is comfortable holding the weight of the skull, let that happen. Good, 2 more. Last one. Good, relax and have a break, resting yourself on the mat, softening that pelvic floor and abdominal connection. Now we're going to go into freestyle legs. So you're going to straighten your heels and realign them now with your knees and your hip bones. If you want to stay in your stop sign position like so, you can, or you could fold your arms over and rest the forehead on the back of your palms. Relax your shoulders from your ears, you're not shrugging upwards. And when you switch on your T-zone, I'd like you to focus on the pelvic floor and abdominal connection, and now draw your rib cage into the mat. So you want to fix your upper body, keep that drawdown of stop sign working in the upper back too. Now take a nice deep breath in, and on the exhale, I'd like you to lengthen your legs as much as you can. Now as we lengthen the legs here, we're trying to float our foot, the front of our foot, maybe our ankle or shin from the mat. Some of you may float your knees. We're going to alternate our kicking and breathing. We're going to kick through the legs for 3 kicks for a breath in. 3 kicks of the legs for a breath out. You're keeping your legs drawn nice and long from your hip bones, and you're utilising your glute max and your hamstrings. Now for those of you that hyperextend through the knees, you can keep a little soft bend through the knees. Think about squeezing the glute to lift the weight of your leg. Breathing, 3 kicks for a breath in, 3 kicks for a breath out. Keep the rib cage settled into the mat so you're not rolling side to side. You're not using your upper back rotation to float the feet from the mat. We're really using glutes and hamstrings. Keep the shoulders drawn down and breathe. Good. Let's make this our final round. 3 kicks for a breath in, 3 kicks for a breath out. Rest the legs down, let the heels turn out and switch them off for a break. Now I make that look easy because I'm talking all the way throughout, but it's actually very difficult, and I'm really working on not hyperextending through my lower back,
which would encourage my lumbar extensors to radiate a lot of lower spine pressure. I'm drawing my abdominals up, and that floats my tailbone softly down, very much like our plank 1 and 2, which we'll look at shortly. Let's come back to the upper body. Come back to your swan prep, or your stop signs for swan prep even. So you're resting your eyes and nose, looking into the mat with the forehead down. You're going to come back to switch back onto those abdominals, pelvic floor first on the inward breath, and then exhale T-zone. Add an extra notch to your leather belt around your hip bones if you need. Now coming into extension nice and slowly, take your breath in. Start to roll your glass marble under your nose towards the edge of the mat line. Now if your forehead lightly peels from the mat, keep looking down the tip of your nose. On the exhale, as you glide the shoulder blades down your back, drawing into the waistline beneath the rib cage, you're gently peeling your chest from the mat without using your arms to push you on up. Keep looking down the tip of your nose, don't lift your chin. Take a breath in and bring your chest back down with the abdominals staying off the mat, drawn inside of you. Look back down with eyes and nose, and on the exhale, roll that marble underneath your chin. Round open the back of your neck and take a nice stretch through the neck here. Good, take a nice deep breath in. Start to roll the marble forwards with the tip of your nose. Don't be tempted to squeeze or clench your glutes. Keep looking down the tip of your nose, and on the exhale, glide the shoulder blades down your back. You're using the draw down of those bony structures, your shoulder blades, into your mid-deep center back beneath that rib cage. Inhale, your chest comes back down slowly. Don't rush this part, don't be tempted to bulge the tummy forwards. Pop your nose back on your glass marble. Exhale, roll it underneath your chin. Round your forehead forwards and open up your neck. Take your time, take a deep breath in. Inhale, roll that nose forwards. Letting the forehead lightly peel off the mat if this happens. Look down the tip of your nose. Not squeezing your glutes. Exhale, glide those bony structures, your shoulder blades, down your back, drawing into the waistline, beneath the rib cage to peel the chest off. Keeping the arms nice and relaxed. Inhale, the chest comes back down, touch your nose back on your glass marble, and then exhale, roll it underneath your chin. Keep it going. So my main focus here is to feel my extension around my bra strap line. So it's in my deep mid-center back, not in my lower back. And if I feel it in my lumbar spine, I know I need a little bit more encouragement of T-zone to keep those abdominals lifted and the pelvis from being tilted too far forwards. I can also pop a chi ball underneath my pelvis if I want to float myself more into a neutral lifted position from the mat, and that would require me to have a deep mindful connection to draw my tailbone down. Let's make this our last one for swan prep. Taking the time to roll the nose forwards towards the edge of the mat line. The eye line does not follow, it looks down the tip of that nose. The exhale is the glide down of the shoulder blades, peeling the chest off gently from the mat. Inhale, keeping the abdominals lifted, we bring the chest back down slowly. Look into the mat with eyes and nose. And then on the exhale, roll that marble underneath the chin. Pop the forehead down for a nice big stretch. Gentle amount of pressure through your palms. And you can get a good cervical neck opening. Good, take a deep breath in. Relax, soften everything and rest it into the mat. Now we're going to go back to the glutes and the lower body extensors. So we're going to fold over the arms once more. If you're comfortable in stop sign, you could stay in this position. If you've got folded over arms, draw the shoulder blades down. Make sure you're not shrugging shoulders into ears. Rest your forehead on the back of your palms. Switch back onto your T-zone. And when you do so, make sure you anchor the rib cage softly into the mat. Now for our next version of freestyle legs, we'll look at breaststroke legs, which is utilising your V stance. So if you're happy with the straight leg kicking, you can squeeze your glutes and extend the legs to float the feet from the mat. You can stay with straight legs. If you'd like, I'd like you to turn your heels inwards, flexing your feet and turning your toes out to press towards, to press your heel bones towards one another. Good, keep that nice extension. And let's breathe for our pulses of beats. So we're going to beat our heels together, 3 beats for a breath in.
Beat the heels together, 3 beats for a breath out. Beat, 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 beat. Now you're keeping your extension, that's your glute and hamstring work. You're keeping external rotation of your toes turned outwards, and you're now incorporating bicep femoris and your glute medius. Beat, 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 beat. If the pressure's too much on your hip bones, you can always place a rolled up towel underneath your hips or your pubic bone, or you can come back to your straight leg freestyle kicking. Keep the turn out and the flex of the feet. Draw the shoulders down away from the earlobes so that we're not encouraging the upper back to round forwards. We want the upper back stable. Keep the rib cage on the mat, keep the abdominals up and breathe. 3 beats of your heels for a breath in, 3 beats for a breath out. Good. Let's make this our final round. Beat your heels, beat your heels. Let your legs rest back on the mat, let the heels turn out and take the time to switch off. Quite a strong exercise on the gluteals and those hip rotation muscles at the front of the pelvis, encouraged by the workload of those hamstrings. Good, so we've looked at extension. Let's bring ourselves up to reading a book on the beach, our plank 1 position. We'll go through plank 1 and plank 2, and then we'll add in a little stability challenge for those of you up in plank 2 or plank 3, and I'll talk about what that might be. Reading a book on the beach, tuck that front portion of your elbow just behind the front portion of your shoulder. Push off your forearms, draw your shoulder blade down to stop sign. And now think about switching on to those abdominals. Take a nice soft breath in and gently lift the pelvic floor, the squeeze of front and back passage. Exhale to lift the abdominals off the mat. Now you're not lifting your hips, you're drawing the abdominals inside the front of the pelvis and drawing the hip bones together as you flatten. You're looking for those little pockets of air to appear beneath both hip bones in the mat. Take your nice deep breath in, and if you're counting your 10 breaths, stay here. Draw down, don't round forwards through the upper back. If you're moving upwards to plank 2 on the exhale, make sure the abdominals lift internally a little bit deeper, and those 2 pockets of air expand, and you push yourself off your forearms, draw your shoulder blades down, and lift your pelvis roughly in line with your shoulder girdle. Take a breath in, and at the top, check, am I in my alignment? Do I need to draw my abdominals a little bit deeper to softly draw the tailbone down on an exhale? Now, if you're in your plank 2, beautiful. You could stay here and breathe, maybe tucking the toes under to come to your 8-point plank. And if you're happy to count your 10 breaths, remain here. For those of you moving up into plank 3, on your next exhale, push into your right toes and extend your left knee, coming into half of your plank 3. Keep these abdominals up. Don't sag down through the lower back or lose that upper back. Push off your forearms. On your next exhale, using those abdominals, push into your right foot and extend your right knee. Take a nice deep breath in and check. Draw my abdominals in, draw my tailbone down. Now you could hold your 10 breaths here, making sure you're not shaking, you're not struggling to use your breath. You're drawing your shoulder blades down, pushing off those forearms into your forearm plank. And anytime you need to come down slowly, reversing 1 knee down at a time, coming back to plank 2, before floating the pelvis back down, coming back to plank 1. Now, once you've finished your 10 breaths in either, and you should be very close to finishing by now, you're going to sink the chest forwards, folding through the upper arms, and coming down to rest completely onto the mat. Have a long break here while I discuss what we're going to do next. So, whilst you're resting, your options could be to repeat your plank 1, plank 2, or plank 3. If you're comfortable just working in stability and really looking at those postures and how they are effective in your abdominal conditioning. If you'd like to add a little bit more, we're going to look at plank 2 or plank 3, what we call control front. Control front is, in your plank 2, could be lifting 1 knee from the mat, coming into half of that plank 3 position that we went through when we were coming on up to plank 3. That's just a knee lift or a leg extension with the foot remaining in contact with the mat. You could lift 1 knee, bring it back down, lift the opposite knee, bring it back down, so forth and so on. If you're going into your plank 3, it would mean lifting 1 leg completely from the mat and utilizing the abdominals to keep the plank in shape.
We'll look at each of those versions as we move on up. If you're staying in plank 1, just repeat your 10 breaths and then take a rest when you're ready. Come back to plank 1 for all. Now remember, stay at plank 1 if you're working plank 1, stay at plank 2 if you're working plank 2, stay at plank 3 if you're working plank 3. You don't have to add on like I am. I'm giving you options and make sure you choose the most effective and safe one. So keep the upper body working. We want to make sure we push off the forearms and draw the shoulder blades down. Switching onto the T-zone for plank 1. Inhale, lift pelvic floor. Exhale, abdominal connection. Take a nice soft breath in here. Stay at plank 1 if you are. On the exhale, as you lift the abdominals off the mat, we're looking for the pockets of air beneath the hip bones to expand and push the pelvis on up to plank 2. Shoulder girdle and pelvis roughly aligned. We make sure we draw the shoulder blades down. And if we need on the exhale, lift those abdominals internally. Draw the tailbone down. Tuck the toes under both feet. Now, if you're happy to stay here and breathe, just work here. Your control fronts in this option could be exhale, push down into your toes, extend one knee from the mat. Good, take a deep breath in and on the exhale, bring the knee down or float the opposite leg from the mat for plank 3. You could bring one knee down at a time on each exhale and then bring one knee up at a time on each exhale and work from that conditioned face. If you're in your plank 3 and you'd like to try your control fronts, keep the abdominals lifted, the tailbone drawn down, upper body working, and on the exhale, push into your right foot. Exhale, lift your left leg from the mat, Bring the left foot down, take a breath in plank 3. And on the exhale, push into your left toes. Exhale, float your right leg from the mat. Keep the flex of the foot, push the heel on up. Bring the foot down, take your breath in. Now go for 4 or 5 on each side, making sure you're utilizing the breath and the lift of those abdominals. You can always come back down to your plank 2, making sure abdominals are lifted internally. And you can work through this modification, working in plank 2. Equally, 3 or 4, 5 leg, knee floats before coming back down to plank 1. And if you'd like to reset in plank 1 and just hold plank 1 for a few breaths, you can. Once you've done your 3, 4 or 5 knee or leg lifts from the mat for control front, remember it could just be your knee, utilizing your plank 2. If you're in your full 3 plank, it could be the foot lifting. And I'm driving up for a flexed foot and a heel, keeping my abdominals working and the upper back really strong. Come back to the mat with both knees for plank 2. Drive the pelvis softly back down to the mat for plank 1. Take a deep breath in, folding out the upper body, bring yourself down and switch off completely for your rest. Very intense work. Make sure you work effectively if you feel the lower back is dragging and creating a lot of lumbar spine pressure. You may be working at a level that's not efficient as an abdominal conditioning exercise because you're straining and losing the T-zone. Drag the hands down to face height, push your chest off, round your upper back, draw your glutes back towards your heels or rest down on bent forearms, dragging the arms towards your chest, rest your head down on the mat, round the upper spine forwards and come into this nice shell position to take a little rest. Good, a deep breath in and out as we relax and take the pressure off of the spine. We've been working quite intensely here. Let's come to lay on our back. Let's do our abdominal session. So we have been focused on abdominals, even though we were working the back. The core unit incorporates all of the muscular slings of the back itself. Let's focus on the front section and work our rectus abdominis in a little bit of flexion. So come on now. Good. So when you come down to lay supine on your back, if you need to realign your neck or head tension using a pillow, you can use that here. Neutral spine, you know you're aware of the lumbar spine gap, and realign your feet and knees to your hip bones. Good, from this we release the upper body, take the tension off. Place the hands on the hip bones and switch on to the T-zone, gently lifting the pelvic floor on the inward breath.
Exhaling to now think about flattening those abdominals from hip bone to hip bone as the thick leather belt wraps around the hips and buckles in front. Good, we're going to go for bent knee fallout. So we're going to inhale as one knee drops out to the side. Now we're keeping the pelvis and the hip bones level, and on the exhale we're using the abdominals to draw the leg back to center. Other side, inhale, the knee drops out to the side, keeping the pelvis level, the lumbar spine in neutral. Exhale through T-zone, draw the leg back to center. Good, alternate your sides for me. Now this means that we're rolling onto the outside edge of the sole of the foot, and we're using the abdominals, internal abdominals, to draw the leg back on in. We're not creating any upper back, neck or jaw pressure. If bent knee fallouts aggravates your hip, you could go for your leg slides as an alternative. Keeping the pelvis from tilting forwards and the lumbar spine going into extension. Let's make this our final one on each side. Stay switched on, we'll add on to this exercise. If you'd like to add on, float your hands directly over your chest, release the shoulders from the ears. Now as you exhale to drop one knee out to the side, we're going to drop the same side arm out to the side. Sorry, inhale the knee out to the side. On an exhale, you're going to utilize the rib cage drawing in and down, the T-zone to draw both the arm and the knee back to center. Inhale, the knee drops out to the side, same side arm also dropping on out. Keep the pelvis level, keep the ribs softly drawn down on the exhale, scooping through the T-zone to bring the arm and the knee back to center. Good, inhale, knee and arm drops out to the side. On the exhale, sink the ribs in and down, draw that arm back on in, T-zone scoops, knee to center. Keep it going, alternating your sides. Inhale, arm and knee drops out to the side. Exhale, draw them back on in. Use your obliques from rib to hip and use your T-zone. Let's make this our last one each side. Good, final one. Inhale and exhale. Lovely, relax the arms by your sides, take time to switch off and rest. Beautiful. From this point, we're going to work into our toe taps. Single leg option or double leg tabletop option, whichever suits you. We're going to float one foot from the mat on the exhale with the T-zone active. Knees aligned over hip for a nice strong tabletop. If you're working single leg, keeping the pelvis and the lower back level, we're going to exhale, tap the toe towards the mat. Inhale to bend the knee over hip. Now as you exhale to tap the toe, you want to encourage the bend in the knee to stay present. We're not lengthening or extending the leg. If you're working single leg, 10 on one side before 10 on the other. If you're working in double leg tabletop, you want a deeper draw down of those internal abdominals, flattening from hip bone to hip bone. And on the exhale, we lift the second leg from the mat. We haven't shifted out of neutral spine. We haven't lost that flattening connection at the front of the pelvis. Exhale to tap the toe and inhale to float. We alternate our toe taps, holding one leg in tabletop if you're working 2 feet from the mat. Now our aim is to keep the ribs softly drawn down, particularly on the exhale. Use your ribs sinking in and down to keep the upper back from arching from the mat. Good. Check with your T-zone and your lower back that you're working really strongly in neutral with that flattening connection at the front of your pelvis. Let's make this our final 2 on each side. If you're working single leg, you should have changed sides already. Last one. Tap the toe, come back to tabletop, bring one foot down at a time, switch off and have a little rest. Beautiful. From that point, we're going to go for our arm prep, look at the upper body setting a little bit more. So we're going to float the arms from the mat with the T-zone switched back on. Now the shoulders are relaxed from the earlobes, there's no tension in your neck or jaw. If you need, lightly part your lips, press your tongue to the roof of your mouth, take a nice soft breath in. Now on the exhale, as you reach overhead slowly, the ribs are sinking in and down as the shoulder blades glide down your mat. You're gently reaching overhead, making sure you're utilizing your obliques from rib to hip. Inhale, hands come back over chest. On the exhale, go for your arm prep, sink the rib cage in and down, shoulders gliding down your back. Inhale, hands over chest, possibly down towards those hip bones. On an exhale, you could float the arms over the chest, sink the ribs in and down as you reach overhead, exhale, making sure the shoulders are gliding down your back. Inhale, hands over chest, possibly down towards the hip bones. Good, keep it going for your arm prep here. Really encourage the rib cage to draw down, working in those internal obliques, keeping the lumbar spine in neutral, the pelvis floating, hip bones level. Now we're not moving through the knees or feet equally. We make sure that we keep the feet aligned to the mat, knees fixed to the ceiling. Again, keep that tongue lightly pressed to the roof of your mouth if you want to eliminate any jaw pressure here. Good, let's make this our final two for our arm prep. On the exhale, we gently float fingers over the chest. Exhale to reach overhead, sink the rib cage in and down, shoulders down your back. Inhale, hands over chest, down towards hip bones. Let's make this our final one. Good, inhale, hands over chest. Bring the hands towards the hip bones. Let them rest on the mat and take a rest here. Beautiful. We're going to exaggerate that draw down at the ribs, looking at our 100th prep position. Now 100th prep could be switched out for ab curl 1, or if you're not curling at all, you could just use the glide down if your arms down the mat past your hip bones, and I'll talk about that in detail in a moment. For those of you that are going into 100th prep, we're going to switch back onto the T-zone, mindful that we're in neutral spine, and float the hands over the chest. Now that draw down of the rib cage towards the hips is going to get larger in this, and we're going to incorporate rectus abdominis. So on your next inward breath, gently tuck your chin towards your chest, lengthen the back of your neck. Now on your next exhale, keeping the shoulders from the ears, we're going to sweep the rib cage in and down, scooping out those abdominals, keeping the lumbar spine in neutral. Reach your hands past your hip bones, pinning the upper body from the mat. Inhale, bring the head and shoulders back down, fingertips to the ceiling. Exhale to curl, sweeping ribs towards the hip to scoop out that bowl of abdominals. You should feel flatness from hip bone to hip bone. You shouldn't feel like you're pushing your tummy forwards. Good. Both feet on the mat is your level 1. For those of you that are non-curling, you can keep your hands on the mat. Encourage the ribs to draw down on the exhale, sweeping rib to hip, scooping out those abdominals, walking hands down the mat to lengthen past your hip bones. You could even do the draw down with the hands floated over the chest, sweeping the ribs towards the hips as you reach down towards the hip bones, long arms. Draw armpit to fingertip, and then inhale, hands over chest, and continue on. Possibly adding a single leg tabletop option, non-curling or curling. For your single leg tabletop, we keep the knee aligned over hip, chin lightly tucked to chest, exhale, sink ribs to hips, scoop out those abdominals, reach the hands past the hip bones. Inhale, hands over chest. Keep it going for 4 on this side. If you're non-curling, you could encourage the ribs to draw down, scooping those abdominals, sweeping hands past the hip bones, keeping the knee aligned over the hip. Inhale, hands over chest. Once we've done 4 on one side, curling or non-curling, we can alternate to the opposite tabletop leg, keeping the alignment of knee over hip, exhaling to curl to sweep the ribs towards the hip bones, scooping out those abdominals, reach hands past hips, keep this knee over hip bone, don't draw it towards you. Inhale, hands over chest, head and shoulders down. Keep the light tuck of chin to chest, so you're encouraging the back of the neck to be long. And if you've got any neck pressure you don't like, you could always use one arm to support that chin lightly tucked to chest. Once you've done 4 on each tabletop leg, your final option could be 4 in double leg tabletop if you're working in that position. You could be curling, non-curling with the legs floating from the mat. You could even work to the full capacity, drawing the ribs towards the hips to scoop those abdominals, peeling head and shoulders off, chin lightly tucked to chest, length through the arms. Inhale, head and shoulders back down, fingertips to the ceiling. Go for 4 if you're capable in double leg tabletop. Even if you don't take the upper body from the mat and you're still working 2 feet from the mat, you could draw down through the ribs and utilize the sweeping of the arms. Make this your final one. Come back to the mat, rest 1 foot down at a time, release the arms to the mat and take your time to switch off. Beautiful. Good job. Let's work those obliques a little bit. Let's come back to this exercise in a moment. We'll work pendulum next. So if you want to stay feet down on the mat, you can keep your feet connected. If you want to work in double leg tabletop, you also can work that option. Now I want you to come back to thinking about zippering up and getting your inner groin connection. So with the feet on the mat or the feet in double leg tabletop, we're going to bring the heel bones back together. Now we're going to zipper up the front of the shins to the knees and then zipper up to the groin. And we make sure we keep the legs connected throughout this exercise. Arms out wide from the chest, palm facing up. Relax the shoulders. Keep your gaze set on the ceiling. Now you're going to inhale as both legs roll over one side of the body. The shoulders should be relaxed on the mat. Squeeze the inner thighs. Exhale, scoop through your bowl of abdominals. Draw your legs back to center. Inhale the legs over one side of the body. We're keeping the shoulders and upper body relaxed. Exhale, scoop through the abdominals, squeezing through the inner thigh connection. Legs back to center. Inhale the legs over. Exhale, scoop and squeeze. Good. Keep it going for your pendulum. Now for those of you that are in double leg tabletop, you want to make sure you're keeping your knees aligned over your hips. You may find that you're walking or waddling yourself down the mat, and that will be because you're lifting one hip higher in this rotation of lower body over top, and you want to resist that. That's bringing you into a little bit of flexion of the spine, and you're going to be losing your T-zone connection. If you're working feet down, your focus is still to keep the upper back on the mat, and you could use a deep draw in of the opposite rib cage and a scoop to draw your legs back to center. So if your legs roll over the left side of your body, inhale, press your hand onto your right rib cage. Exhale, sweep ribs towards hips on the right side, scooping those abdominals, legs to center. Good. Lovely, let's make this our last one. Come back to center, release the feet, have a little break and switch off, arms by your side. Good, now we're going to work towards our beats. Beats can be done in many multiple levels, depending on what you'd like to work with. You can also come back to your lift foot and your lift and extend exercises, 10 repetitions in each on each leg, if you're not working any further into beats. Now the first option would be our knee beats. We're going to bring our heel bones together. We keep a little part through the knees, and the knees are aligned to our hip bones, very similar to the squat position that you had in the stance. Now for your knee beats, you add in your 100th prep curl, so your hands are floating over your chest, shoulders from your ears, switch back onto the T-zone. A light tuck of chin to chest on your breath in. For your knee beats, which is level 1, we're going to exhale to curl, sweep the hands past the hip bones, keeping the upper body curled. We're going to beat our knees, squeezing inner thighs together for 3 deep huffs. Huff, huff, huff. And we bring the knees back to hip alignment. Inhale, lower body comes back to the mat, fingertips to the ceiling. Press your heels together. On the exhale, sweeping ribs to hips, chin lightly tucked to chest. Scoop out those abdominals to peel the upper body off. The lower back still in neutral, hands past the hip bones. Beat your inner thighs, squeezing the inner thighs together. Inhale, release the upper body to the mat. Good. So throughout your knee beats, you're keeping ribs drawn to hips and flattening those abdominals. And you're trying to squeeze your inner thighs together by squeezing your knees together. And then you lower the lower body. You could go for 10 of your knee beats with your feet remaining on the mat. For those of you that are working into double leg tabletop, your option is to work towards your full beats. You could have your feet remaining in double leg tabletop and copy your knee beat pattern from your feet remaining on the ground. I'll show you that option. You could float your hands directly over your chest, squeezing your heels together, keeping a little part through your knees aligned to hip bones. We're going to come into our curl. Chin lightly tucked to chest, inhale, and on the exhale, sweep ribs towards hips, scoop the abdominals, reach hands past the hip bones. Squeezing the heels together, you beat your inner thighs by squeezing your knees. Come back to knees parted in tabletop. Inhale, head and shoulders back down. On the exhale, sweep ribs towards hips, curling upper body off. Reach hands past the hip bones, press the heels together. Beat your knees and inner thighs for 3 beats inwards and 3 hops. And then you inhale to lower. You could do 10 repetitions in this position, or you could work for 4 beats with leg extension, and you'd be very, very soft with this extension directly up from the pelvis. Your extension could be more at a 45-degree angle. As you exhale to curl, you keep your knees and feet together. You're going to sweep your ribs towards your hips to scoop the abdominals. Hands reach past the hip bones. Now you're going to extend both legs. Turn your feet out with flexed feet, pressing heel bones together. Beat your heels, squeezing your inner thighs together for 3 beats and 3 hops. Then you inhale to unrotate the legs. Bring the legs back to tabletop as you lower the upper body. Exhale to curl, sweep the hands past the hip bones. Turn the feet on out, rotating at the thigh joint, press the heels together. Beat your heels, 3 beats, 3 hops. Unturn, inhale, tabletop and lower. Exhale to curl and extend, turning out at the feet, flex the feet and beat the heels. Inhale to lower. Good. You could go for 10 reps of your 4 beats, resting whenever you need. We're going to finish off our final 2. Curling, chin to chest. Working either in double leg tabletop or down with both feet. Make this your last one. Curl. Good, come back to the mat. Arms relaxed. Feet down one at a time, switch off and have a break from those abdominals. Well done. We're going to move into side lines, do a little bit of glute and inner thigh work here, and then we'll finish for our session. Squeezing your inner thighs together, gently roll onto your sides. Push yourself up, grab your towel or pillow if you need to realign the ear or the neck here. Have this straight arm or your bicep position otherwise. Get yourself comfortable in side lying. So side lying, we're going to begin with straight leg raise. We want to make sure top hip bone even is gently rolled forwards. And we're going to push the top hip bone down to lift the bottom waist. Now we're not going to encourage this hip bone to rotate towards the ceiling. We can check pelvic floor is on across our T-zone line. And as we flatten those abdominals from hip bone to hip bone, we're going to lengthen out the top leg. Now the length in this top leg pulls the bottom waist a little bit deeper from the mat. Your legs at hip height. You make sure you rotate the thigh down from the hip. Keep it here for a slightly more modified version. Sweep the leg halfway between the buttocks and the bottom knee for a more intense position, or 2 thighs aligned for maximum intensity. Keep the turn down from the thigh. Exhale, push the heel on up, and inhale to lower. Now as we exhale, we're only pushing the heel up as high as we can keep balanced through the pelvis and the bottom waistline lifted from the mat. We're going for 12. Exhale, push the heel up and inhale to lower. At any point, the leg could come back to halfway or come back in line with the hip bone and pelvis. Keep the turn down from the thigh. So we're working glute medius and minimus here. And if this is uncomfortable being on your side, come back onto your back. Do your 10 double glute squeezes, your 10 isolated squeezes on each side with pelvic floor snatching, and then come into your bridge or your pelvic curl. 10 repetitions. Final 3. Good. 2. And 1. Rest the leg down, have a little break. Good. Now we're going to go back to that long position and come into rectangles. So we make sure bottom waist is lifted, top hip bones forwards, lengthen out the leg at hip height. Keep it extended. Now you want to make sure your leg doesn't drop below the hip bone. That's the bottom edge of your rectangle. Keep flattening those abdominals, sweep the leg forwards. Inhale, exhale up and back, squeezing your glute max. Inhale down at hip height and sweep forwards. Good, exhale up and back, squeezing the glute max. Good, inhale short and long, exhale short and long. Good. Keep your hand lightly resting on the mat for balance. You can see here I'm never dropping my leg below my hip bone height, and I'm very consciously drawing the rectangle from the hip bone itself. If your rectangle is not comfortable, you could try drawing a nice circle instead. We're working for 3 more rectangles in this direction. Or you could come back to clown 1. Make this your last rectangle, hold the length in the leg, extend it away. Now reverse. We're gonna inhale up and forwards, exhale down at hip height and squeeze, push it back. Inhale up and forwards, down and back, exhale. Good, so we're working towards 10 rectangles, forwards and back. We're exhaling a short and a long. We're inhaling a short and a long side. Now you should be feeling that the top leg is quite fatigued. We're utilizing quite a lot of muscular slings in this exercise, our final 2. Again, the leg does not drop below the hip height. Last one. Draw your last side and rest the leg down. Woo! Good. Have a little rub, have a little rest. We're going to go into inner thigh lift. So there are 2 positions you might take. We're going to straighten out the bottom leg. That's the inner thigh we'll be working. We can either bend at 90 degrees with this top leg and place the knee and the inside of the shin onto the mat, rolling the top hip gently forwards. Or if it's comfortable, you could bend at your ankle, place your foot flat on the mat, drive the knee outwards, so you're coming to a little bit of external rotation at a bent knee joint, and you could work at this level too. Whatever's comfortable on the knee or the hip. Hand in front for balance. We're going to make sure we lift our bottom waistline by pushing the top hip bone down, driving this knee outwards if you've got the sole of the foot on the mat. Take a deep exhale, flattening those abdominals from hip bone to hip bone. Now we want to make sure we push up through our ankle. So on the exhale, we're going to lift the bottom leg, driving the bottom ankle up. Inhale to lower. Exhale, squeezing the inner thigh to lift the leg, pushing up through the ankle. Exhale and inhale. Good. So your inner thigh work is the bottom leg. You can press your hands onto the the AD works here. And check that the inner thigh is tensing as we push the heel on up. And that should be our main focus, to connect to those adductors. So if you're here, you might find it hard to fit your fingers on it. Keep the upper body relaxed. Squeeze the inner thigh, push it up. Good, working for 10. So we've got 2 more. Last one. Rest the leg on down, have a break. Good. So there are 2 options for the next exercise. You could go into your double leg lift, looking at that inner thigh connection. Squeezing the inner thighs to exhale, lift the legs, drawing the top hip bone, into the top rib cage. That could be you for 10 to 12 repetitions. If you'd like to work in side balance, we're going to bend the knees to 45, push ourselves on up to rest onto either a bent forearm such as this, which is a little bit more forgiving on the shoulder, or a straight arm balance if you'd like a little bit more intensity. Now the knees are at 45 degrees. We're going to lift our bottom waist, and you can see I'm not letting my hip bone drop down towards the mat. I'm lifting the bottom hip bone to align it to my knee. I'm going to take a nice deep breath in, switching onto pelvic floor, and then exhale to those abdominals. And I'm going to take a nice deep breath in and reach my top arm on up. If you're in your balance on your elbow, this will be a little bit more intense than if you're using a straight arm. So I'm going to show you the bent arm version first.
Take a deep breath in, and on the exhale, you're going to rotate your chest down, under and through, reaching underneath the rib cage. Turn the eye line to look at the elbow joint. Inhale, we're unrotating, bringing the arm back on up. Now this shoulder is behind the elbow at all times. It's not directly over, it's slightly pulled back, and I'm using my bottom waist to keep it in this position. As I rotate down, under and through, I'm driving through my forearm, keeping the shoulder gently drawn back, the bottom waist lifted to work those obliques. I'm rotating and lifting on up. If you're in the straight arm position, such as so, this will be a little bit easier. So if you want a deeper, more intense version, you could float your hip bone completely from the mat. Gently drive the hips forwards, keeping the T-zone working. And on the exhale, reach down, under and through. Again, the shoulder stays behind the palm. And as I unrotate, come back to the ceiling, inhale. You'll notice my shoulder isn't over my palm, it's slightly behind. Keeping the bottom waist up. You exhale, rotate, down, under and through. Inhale, rotate and lift on up. Lift the bottom waist in both cases. You're going for 10. If it's uncomfortable on the shoulder at any point, you can come back to your double leg lift. If you're in your double leg lift, you should be just about finishing. Have a little break. For those of you that are working in the bent knee position in this exercise with the hip bones down, make sure you keep the bottom waist pulled from the mat, and you're rotating using the obliques, the rib cage drawing underneath that armpit. Make this your final 2. Keep drawing the bottom waist up, don't let it drop into the mat. Come back to the mat by resting yourself down gently and have your break here. Good, let's change sides. So we're starting with our straight leg raise. We're starting with legs in 45 and we're switching back on in the sideline position by lifting the bottom waistline and rolling the top hip forwards. From this position, you remember you keep the bottom leg bent, flattening those abdominals from hip bone to hip bone, we lengthen out the top leg in line with the hip bone. Keep it here for modified, turning down at the thigh joint, halfway between the buttocks and the knee, a little bit more harder. Floating thighs over one another is where we could work most intensely. Keeping the turn down from the thigh, we're going to exhale, push the heel on up, and inhale to lower. Now we're pushing up through the heel, we're keeping our bottom waist lifted, our T-zone flattening, and if we need to, we can always come back in line with the hip joint to make this a little bit easier, or a little bit intenser on those glutes, I should say. Straight leg raise, working glute medius and minimus, also working a little bit of piriformis for those with sciatic issues. We make sure we're working the abdominals, top hip bone doesn't roll back, flattening those abdominals and the bottom waistline lifted from the mat. If you're on your back and you're not working in side lying, you could always go for your oblique curls. If you're non-curling, you could go for your leg slides, arm prep. Final one, push the heel on up and inhale to lower, have a little break. We're going into our rectangles next. We keep the top hip bone rolled forwards, press the top hip bone down, lift the bottom waist on up. Flattening those abdominals from hip bone to hip bone, we lengthen the leg at hip height. And be mindful your rectangle doesn't drop below this height. Now we're going to begin sweeping the leg forwards, inhale and up. And exhale, push the heel back, squeezing the glute and down at hip height. Inhale, forwards and up. Exhale, back, squeezing the glute and down. Check with your eye line that you're keeping the leg floated at hip height at the rectangle's lowest level. So we don't want the leg to drop down. If we do so, we're going to encourage the pelvis to move around, and we'll also be stressing through the lumbar spine and the pelvic floor. We want to keep the workload into the glutes itself, and this is great conditioning for glute minimus. Let's draw 2 more circles before we reverse. Again, if you're not comfortable, you could do your circles. You could come back to your clown 1.
Let's hold it here, take a deep breath in, keep the bottom waist lifted, reverse, lift on up and forwards, inhale, down, exhale and push it back, squeezing the glute. Up and forwards, inhale, down and back, exhale. Good. Remembering the bottom shelf of your rectangle is at hip height, no lower. Good. Make sure you're drawing a rectangle and not some funny shape at the edge of your mat. Making sure you're actively connected to the T-zone and the bottom waist. Good, 3 more. Whoa, the legs getting very heavy, very fatiguing through the minimus as well as medius. Your last one here. Rest the leg on down, have a break. Good work. Let's do our inner thigh work. We're keeping the bottom leg straight this time, and the top leg could bend at 90 with the knee and the shin on the mat, or you could bend at the knee joint and place the foot onto the mat. So I've got very slippery socks and I'm sliding all over the floor. You want to drive the knee outwards and push the hip bone down to keep the bottom waist up and the pelvic floor on. You want to make sure you're actively connecting to those flattening abdominals too. And you want to make sure you're squeezing the inner thigh to press the heel on up towards the ceiling. If you're in this position, equally squeeze the inner thigh, exhale, push the heel on up, and inhale to lower. Making sure the upper body is nice and relaxed, keeping the bottom waist lifted from the mat, so that's the top hip bone pressed down. And you're connecting to the inner thigh, so you can place your hands onto the inner thigh itself. Exhale, drive, pushing the heel on up, and inhale to lower. You're pushing the inside of the ankle bone towards the ceiling, squeezing through the inner thigh. We're working for 10, so we're over halfway. Good, final 3. 2. And 1. Rest it down, have a little break here. Now your options are your double leg lift. So you could have 2 straight legs, hand on the mat for balance, top hip bone forwards. You manually switch on the T-zone, squeezing the heels and inner thighs, and you exhale, double leg lift, inhale to lower. On the exhale, we're moving the top hip bone into the top rib cage, so we're utilising the inner thighs and obliques. If you want to work in side balance, bend the knees to 45. Push yourself up either onto the elbow joint, drawing the shoulder behind the elbow itself, lifting the bottom waist upright, hand floating to the ceiling. Now you switch onto your T-zone manually. You make sure that you're really working through a nice strong forearm in this bent position. The bottom waist stays lifted, almost as if you're pulling it from the mat. On your exhale, you rotate your fingers underneath your rib cage. Keep your shoulder behind your elbow. Turn your eye line to your elbow. Push off your forearm. Inhale, unrotate, fingertips back to the ceiling. That could be your first level of this exercise. And you're working very strong to keep this top hip bone pushed down, bottom waist on up. If you're working with straight arm position here, equally drive underneath you as you lift the waistline from the mat. Now this is a precursor to lifting the bottom hip bone from the mat and staying on the knees itself. From this position, push the top hip bone down, lift the bottom waist on up, push off that straight arm, shoulder from your ear. Exhale, rotate down, under and through, looking down at your fingers, keeping your shoulder behind your palm. Inhale to unrotate, lift your bottom waist towards the ceiling. Exhale, rotate down, under and through. Inhale, lift. Good, exhale and inhale. Keep the bottom waist lifted, shoulder behind the palm, or if you're down on that bent forearm, behind the elbow joint. Good, making sure the eye line follows where that hand is rotating underneath the rib cage, and you feel the obliques really working to support this system. Good, let's go for 2. Push off the forearm or the straight arm through the palm. Lift the bottom waist as you reach on up, inhale, last one. Good, come back to the mat, resting the upper body down and have a little break here. Beautiful work. We're going to push ourselves upright. Come into our box position. We'll do a little hip flexor stretch to end. Hands are underneath the shoulders, knees are underneath the hip bones. Gently draw the shoulder blades down and switch onto the T-zone. Now we're going to come into a lunge position. So one foot is going to come between the hands. It doesn't have to be graceful, it never is. And you're going to gently walk like I am, scrunching your toes forwards. So your toes are in front of your index finger on the mat. Now take a deep breath in, and on this exhale, scoop through the abdominals. Press the hands off the mat, bring them onto the front of the thigh and lift the chest upright. If you need a balance aid, grab your foam roller or your chair and you can pop it to the side of you. You want to make sure that you're utilising the side of the back leg as your chair balance side. Now check your knee, front knee, is just behind your ankle. It's not at 90 degrees yet. And you want to both level your pelvis, so check your hip bones are both facing forwards. Your belt line's parallel and your chest is directly over your hip bones. Float that sternum, stay upright. Good, you're squeezing this back glute max muscle. So on an exhale, we're going to squeeze the glute max quite intensely and draw the tailbone down, and we start to feel the front of the hip bone open. Pop some padding underneath the kneecap if you need to. Take some pressure off the bottom knee. Take a deep breath in now, keep the sternum floating. Keep this glute max connection and the tailbone drawing down to keep the workload of opening the front of the hip, not just stretching the thigh. To make your stretch bigger, take a nice deep breath in. And on the exhale, gently now lunge through the front leg, bringing the front knee over the front ankle, glute on, tailbone down, hips level and facing forwards. Squeeze, keep the sternum upright and breathe. A deeper stretch now into iliacus and our hip flexor group, our psoas. We can stay here and breathe. Now don't be tempted to lunge too far forwards and come into this dangerous range where the knee is over the ankle joint. You can really aggravate groin, and you can also get into some knee pain. So we keep 90 or thereabouts. If you're very mobile and that works for you, beautiful, but as a rule, let's keep ourselves upright. Keep the glute and the tailbone down, stretching the front of the hip at a 90-degree angle range through the front knee. Drive down through the groin if you want a little bit more. Keep yourself upright. Let's go for 2 deep, long breaths. Last one. Good. Now we're going to bend our upper body forwards, place our hands either side of our foot on the mat. Take a deep breath in, and now straighten out the front leg, pulling the bum back. Now you'll notice I've more or less got a 90-degree angle through my hip, knee and ankle bone on the back leg. I'm keeping a fairly straight leg here. I want to make sure that my knee, hip and foot are aligned on the straight leg, and I can have a little point forwards. Now the upper body wants to flatten out the upper back as much as possible. So if you want to, you can walk your hands back towards your hips, bring the chest a little bit more upright with the sternum floating, and that will make it a little bit easier. The further forwards, you want to draw your sternum forwards and get a deeper stretch into your hamstring group at the back of the leg. Take a deep breath in, keep breathing. You're going to flex your foot, pushing your heel down, pull your bum back a little bit deeper, come into a slightly different hamstring stretch. Deep breath in and out, we'll hold for 3. Good. Keep drawing the sternum forwards, 2, and 1. Let's replace the legs. We can go into our lunge position from this position without coming back to the box if it suits you. Now remember, you walk your toes forward, so when you bring your chest upright of your hips, your knee, the front leg is not at 90 degrees yet. It's more at an incline. We want to float ribs over hips. We want to level out the hip bones, and that might mean that you drop that top front leg, such as I am, and you keep your hip bones facing forwards. Keep the sternum floated and upright. Have your balance aid, a wall or a chair on the side of the leg that you're stretching if it suits you. Take a deep breath in, start to squeeze the glute max of the back leg and draw the tailbone down to come into a small range of posterior pelvic tilt, and you'll start to open up the front of the hip. Breathe nice and deeply into this first stage of your stretch, and if this is where you stay, this is where you stay upright. Squeeze your back glute, really strong, draw the tailbone down, feel the front of the hip opening first.
Now on the next exhale to add on, we're gently going to keep that glute work as we bend the front knee forwards over the front ankle. Tailbone still wants to draw down, glute wants to stay engaged. Hip bones are level and facing forwards. Sternum upright to breathe. Again, if you want to come into the deeper lunge position without any pain, that might suit you, but as a general rule, let's keep 90 in the front leg. Let's keep the tailbone drawing down. Draw your groin downwards towards the mat. Keep the glute and the tailbone working. Let's breathe for 3, 2, and 1. Beautiful. Let's bring the chest forwards over to the front thigh. Let's now draw our glutes back as we straighten out the front leg to come into our hamstring stretch. Place the hands either side of the thigh. Walk them back towards your hip bones. Bring your chest upright. If you'd like a slightly modified stretch, you're feeling the stretch at the back of the leg from knee to hip. If you want a deeper stretch, you can walk your hands forwards. Point your toes, draw your bum back towards your heels, making sure you've got more or less 90 in this back leg from knee, hip, and ankle. Draw down through the back, lift the sternum upright, and breathe. Point forwards through the toes. Good, let's change and have a little shift. We're going to flex through the foot, push the heel down, pull the bum slightly further back towards the heels. Again, walking the hands forwards for a slightly deeper stretch. Hands towards the hip bones for a slightly less intense stretch. Breathe in and out nice and deeply. Keep the flex of the foot. 3 breaths left. Lovely. We're going to bend at the front knee. Place the weight forwards. Bring this knee back in line to our box. And we're going to come up. So if you're coming up through your lunge position, you will come out through your hip flexor stretch. I'm coming up through downward dog slowly. Shoulders down, switching on the T-zone. Take a deep breath in, tuck the toes under. Now on the exhale, as I lift through those abdominals, I'm going to lift my hips high. As my hips lift, I'm going to push against my palms and my shoulders and draw my heels towards the mat. I'm keeping my hips as high as I can, and you'll notice I haven't shifted my bum down. I'm trying to promote my hips to lift as I draw down through the ankle itself, so I'm getting a nice calf stretch. Take a deep breath in and out here. Soften at the knees by bending. Then start to walk your hands back towards your feet. Come into your forward fold. Take a nice deep breath in here. Pressing to switch on the legs. Start to scoot the abdominals. Start to round through the upper back as you roll and stack the vertebrae upright, one at a time towards the ceiling, lifting the crown last. Take a nice soft breath in. Release the shoulders and you're all done. Well done. I'll see you next week for week 4 of Precise Pilates Online. I hope you enjoyed your class. Have a good day.